Welcome to another fantastic factoring edition of Comet Algebra. This video is for Chapter 10, Section 2, Factoring Trinomials. So I'd like to remind you of something you did way back in Chapter 9 when we learned the foiling method. And we learned that when we did this foiling, there was 4 different multiplies to do. X times x is x squared. The outer product was 7x. The inner product was 5x. And 7 times 5 was 35. So I'm going to just point something out to you that we may not have realized before. The 7 and the 5 were very special and unique to this problem because 7 and 5, when we simplified this, we had x squared plus 12x plus 35, if you remember. And the 7 and the 5, when we added them together, we got this 12. When we multiplied them together, we got this 35. So we were kind of using the 7 and 5 to do 2 things at once. 7 times 5 gave us the 35, and 7 plus 5 gave us the 12. That's these 2 numbers that were in our answer. Well, now we're going to be taking this trinomial and we're going to be going backwards and pulling it apart and factoring it into the 2 binomials that we had started with for the foiling method. So basically, you're going to do foiling backwards. I typed up these steps to help us learn this foiling, backwards foiling method, and I kind of call it the diamond because this diamond can help us organize our information a little bit. But what's neat is that some of you are going to be able to see this even without using the diamond once you get familiar with it, and that's just fine. So these steps will help us get started. So first, my diamond doesn't even really look like a diamond. It looks more kind of like just a big X here. And when I say multiply the first term and the last, multiply the first and last, and you put that here on top of the diamond. And then you just grab this middle term, whatever it is, and you put it here at the bottom of the diamond. And then we're going to be looking to fill in these blanks right here with 2 things that when you multiply, you get this top part, this top blank in the diamond, and when you add those 2, you get the bottom part. Now we're asking our brains to do 2 things at once, multiply and add, and our brains don't like to do 2 things at once, so this diamond helps us organize this thought. And after we come up with these 2 blanks here, we're going to use them to write our 2 binomial factors. And then, of course, we can check our answers by foiling to see if we get back to the original polynomial. So it's okay if these steps aren't crystal clear right now. Let's go through a few examples, and I think they will become clear. In example 1, we're asked to factor the polynomial x squared minus 5x plus 6. So what we're looking for 2 numbers that when you multiply them, you get a positive 6, and when you add them, you get a negative 6. So it can be a little confusing. The diamond can help us organize. So on top of the diamond goes first times last. 6 times x squared is 6x squared. Place the middle term in the bottom of the diamond. And then I'm going to add these words for right now, but pretty soon I will not be adding these words. We want to find 2 things that add to this bottom part, and at the very same time, they multiply to get the 6x squared. So we're thinking, let's see if we came up with, 6 times 1, and we think that 6 and 1 can give us this 5. So let's say I wrote a 6x here and a 1x here, and then I have to get a negative 5, so I thought this is negative. Now don't write this down because I'm making some mistakes on purpose. But this is really close because negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, and it's almost. Up here it would give you, if you multiplied these 2, it would be a negative 6x squared. So we were so close, but no, we were wrong. It's not 6 and 1. So let's think about 2 and 3. If I had a 2x here and a 3x here, well, let's check. That does multiply to 6x squared, but it doesn't add to a negative 5. So if I tried negative 2x and negative 3x, negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5, and it does multiply, so we have found them. This is what we were looking for. Two numbers that multiply to give a positive 6 and at the same time add to get a negative 5. So these are the two numbers we are going to grab and put into our binomials, x minus 2 and x minus 6. And let's say we want to check because we want to be sure. So if we FOIL this, we get x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 6. And then when you combine your middle terms, we do indeed end up with the original polynomial. So this is the factored form that we were looking for, and it checks out. All right, example number 2, I'm going to put the diamond over here. First times last goes on top of the diamond. The middle term, when it's in standard form, goes on the bottom of the diamond. And because that just says negative x, for clarifying, I'm going to put in a negative 1x. So we want two numbers that when they multiply, we get a negative 42, and when we add them, we get a negative 1. So you start going through the multiples of 42. Okay, 1 times 42 won't give us a 1, and 2 times 21 won't give us a 1. And this is where you have to know your multiplying facts. And if you realize that 6 times 7 is 42, and they're 1 unit apart, you're getting pretty close here. We want to get negative 42, and we want our 1 to be negative when we add. I'll put these words in here again just to be very clear. We want to multiply, and so we realize if we want to add these and get a negative 1, this 7 has to be negative. So now we've come up with our two numbers we need to write our binomials, x plus 6 and x minus 7. And once again, FOIL those and check, and we do indeed get our original trinomial. Now, example 3 here is a good reminder that when you are factoring, you always, always, always look for a GCF first. That's why it's number 1 on the factoring poster in our room. If you look for a GCF first, your life is going to be much easier. And we do have a trinomial. We are going to have to use the diamond method, but hopefully we observe something. All of these terms have a 3 in them. So if we do this 3, the GCF first, then our diamond work is going to be so much easier. But the 3 has to remain part of the answer. So let's grab the 3 and put it in front and divide out the 3 from each of the terms in our trinomial. And we get x squared plus 12x plus 32. Now, like I said, we'll keep this 3 as part of our answer. It's going to sit in front of our binomials, but now our diamond work has much smaller numbers to deal with. So first times last goes on top. The middle term goes on the bottom. I need two factors that when I multiply them, I get 32, and when I add them, I get 12. So we're thinking of the factors of 32. 1 times 32, that's not going to give me a 12. 16 times 2 won't give me a 12. But hopefully you see that 4 times 8 is 32, and 4 plus 8 is 12. So we have found our numbers we need for our binomials. Please keep your GCF, the 3 in front, and then put your two binomials. Because remember, now if I would FOIL this out and then multiply by 3, then I'll get back to this original trinomial. So our factoring checks out. All right, example 4, I'm looking and I see that there is no GCF, so I just move right into the diamond part. I need to come up with two things that when I multiply them, I get 40x squared, and when I add them, I get negative 13x. And this could be helpful if you need to. I call this the lollipop. And what the lollipop does, it just gives us a place to write down all the ways that we can get 40, because we may not be seeing the 13 right off the top of our heads. So now if I look at ways, this can't add to 13, this can't, but here it is. These add to 13. So do the lollipop when it's needed, and it can come in real handy. So we would have a negative 5x and a negative 8x. So now we have our numbers we need for our binomials. And once again, if you would FOIL these two binomials, you would get back to your original trinomial. All right, in example 5 here, just checking, I am seeing a GCF. 6, 24, and 16 all share the number 6 in common. So we're going to start, before we even do the diamond, we're going to factor out a 6 and make our life much easier. Because now in the diamond, I just need to find a 3x squared when I multiply and a negative 4x when I add. The only factors of 3 are 3 and 1, so that's the only choices. And in order for this 4 to be negative, both of these have to be negative. So once again, keep 6. It is still part of your answer. And then your binomials are x minus 3 and x minus 1. Our last example, try it yourself, hit pause, and then check your work. Sorry, that might have been a little mean, but I hope you were trying. Did you do some checking to see how can I get 3x squared when I multiply and get 5x when I add? Because the only way to do this is 1x and 3x. And if you add, you don't get a 5x. So did you run into a brick wall? And don't get mad at me. Sometimes a trinomial, like this one, cannot be factored. And what we write when we find that, we just say, well, this is prime. There is no way to break it up into more factors, which really is the definition of a prime number. So watch out for those. There's several in your assignment that are prime. All right, that's what you need for section 10.2. So have fun factoring.